Right now, you probably have access to more solitude than any human who ever lived. A room with a door that locks, headphones that cancel the world, a phone that lets you disappear into silence whenever you choose. You can be alone, truly, completely alone, anytime you want. Your ancestors could not. For 300,000 years, the average human being was never more than a few feet from another person. They were born into a group of 20 to 30 people. They slept within arm's reach of their family. They hunted in groups, gathered in groups, cooked in groups, and died surrounded by the same faces they had known their entire lives. True solitude, the kind you experience so casually that you don't even notice it, was not a feature of prehistoric life. It was an emergency. And what the prehistoric mind did when it found itself alone, accidentally, briefly, terrifyingly, tells us something profound about what silence actually does to a human brain that was never designed to experience it. Let's start with the basic reality of prehistoric life. You are a hunter-gatherer living somewhere in East Africa, roughly 70,000 years ago. Your world is about the size of a few square miles. You know every person in it by name, by smell, by the specific sound of their footsteps on dry ground. You have known most of them since before you could walk. Your group moves together, sleeps together, eats together. Even the most private acts of daily life, relieving yourself, washing in a stream, tending to an injury, happen within earshot of other people. There is no concept of a room, a personal space, a boundary between yourself and the group. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford University spent years studying the social structure of hunter-gatherer communities and found something consistent across every group ever documented. The typical hunter-gatherer band was almost never fewer than 15 people, not because of rules, not because of planning, because anything smaller than 15 was not statistically survivable for long. Below a certain group size, you could not maintain the hunting rotations, the child care, the night watches, the food-sharing systems that kept everyone alive. You needed people around you the way you needed air and water. The idea of choosing to be alone, of walking away from the group for an hour just to think, just to breathe, just to be by yourself, would have been as strange and as frightening as choosing not to eat. But here is the thing. Alone did happen, not by choice, but it happened. A hunter following an animal that moved faster than expected. A woman gathering plants who walked further than she realized. A child who fell asleep in the wrong spot and woke after the camp had moved. These moments of accidental solitude were brief, usually minutes, rarely more than an hour, and the prehistoric mind responded to them in a very specific way. Not with peace, not with reflection, not with the quiet relief that modern humans often feel when they finally get a moment to themselves. With terror. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago spent decades studying the biology of loneliness and isolation. He found that the human nervous system responds to social isolation with the same physiological cascade as physical danger. Heart rate increases. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods the bloodstream. The brain's threat detection systems go into high alert. Sleep, when it comes at all, becomes lighter and more easily disrupted because the isolated brain is scanning constantly for threats that the group would normally be watching for. This is not a modern response to a modern problem. It is an ancient alarm system doing exactly what it was built to do. In the prehistoric world, a human alone was a human in genuine danger. The alarm that fired in your nervous system when the group disappeared was the same alarm that fired when a predator appeared in the tree line. It was not anxiety. It was accurate threat detection. And for hundreds of thousands of years, it kept people alive by driving them immediately back toward the group. So what did the prehistoric mind actually do in those moments of accidental solitude? The research points to three consistent responses, and all three of them still happen inside you today. Every time you are alone in a way your nervous system reads as unexpected or unsafe. The first response was hypervigilance. The moment the group disappeared from sight or sound, the prehistoric brain switched into a scanning mode that modern neuroscience can measure and observe. Every sound became significant. Every movement in the peripheral vision demanded attention. The mind stopped processing anything that wasn't immediately relevant to finding the threat or finding the group. You have felt this. The slightly uneasy feeling of being in an unfamiliar place alone at night. The way a strange sound makes you freeze. The particular alertness that comes over you in an empty parking garage or a quiet street at 2 a.m. That is not irrational fear. That is your nervous system running a program that is 300,000 years old. Checking, scanning, calculating where the group is and whether something dangerous is near. The second response was immediate action to end the solitude. The prehistoric mind did not sit with aloneness. It did not reflect on it, accept it, or explore it. It moved. A hunter who realized he had gone too far from camp did not pause to enjoy the quiet of the forest. He turned around. The drive to return to the group was as automatic and as urgent as the drive to pull your hand hand away from fire. It required no decision. It was the body doing what the body was built to do. This urgency, this almost physical pullback toward people, is something modern humans experience too, though they often dismiss it as neediness or social anxiety or an inability to be alone. But it is none of those things. It is the oldest navigation system in the human body, pointing in the direction it was always designed to point, toward the fire, toward the voices, toward the people who meant survival. The third response was the most remarkable. When the solitude lasted long enough that immediate return was not possible, when a hunter was lost, when a traveler was separated, when darkness fell before anyone could find their way back, the prehistoric mind did something extraordinary. It began to people the silence, voices, presences, the sense of being watched or accompanied, sounds that seemed to carry meaning, the strong conviction that someone or something was nearby, even when nothing visible confirmed it. This is not psychosis. It is not hallucination in any pathological sense. It is the brain doing something deeply human. Psychologist Julian Jaynes described the phenomenon of the mind generating internal voices and presences as one of the oldest and most consistent features of human mental experience. Researchers studying polar explorers, long-distance solo sailors, prisoners in solitary confinement, and mountaineers separated from their groups have documented the same pattern across thousands of modern cases. When the human mind is deprived of social contact for long enough, it generates social contact from within. It creates companions. Some of the earliest evidence of belief in spirits, ancestors, and invisible presences, some of the first seeds of what would eventually become religion, may have their roots here, in the prehistoric mind alone in the dark, reaching for the presence of the group it could no longer see, creating, in the silence, what the silence had taken away. Here is where it gets truly fascinating. Scheduled solitude, chosen, controlled, purposeful time alone, did exist in prehistoric societies, but it looked nothing like the solitude we know today. In many hunter-gatherer cultures studied by anthropologists, deliberate solitude was treated as a serious, significant, and somewhat dangerous undertaking. Not something you did casually, not something you chose for rest or leisure, something you entered with intention and exited with something to show for it. The vision quest traditions of many indigenous North American cultures, documented across hundreds of distinct societies, share a common structure that anthropologists believe reflects something far older than any specific cultural practice. A person, usually a young man or woman at a threshold moment in their life, leaves the community deliberately and spends time alone in the wilderness. No food, often no water beyond what nature provides, no contact with the group. The explicit purpose is not rest, not reflection in the modern therapeutic sense. It is encounter. The expectation, built into the ritual shared by the whole community, is that the isolated mind will experience something, a vision, a presence, a voice, a revelation about who this person is and what their role in the community will be. And consistently, across cultures that had no contact with each other, it worked, because the isolated human mind, pushed far enough, does reliably generate profound experiences. The combination of hunger, sleep deprivation, sensory reduction, and social isolation creates measurable changes in brain chemistry. Dopamine levels shift. The boundary between internal and external experience becomes porous. The mind, starved of its normal social input, begins to process its own depths in ways that feel, and may genuinely be, meaningful. The vision quest was not superstition. It was the deliberate, ritualized use of the brain's own isolation response to generate insight. Your ancestors understood something about solitude that modern humans, with their noise-canceling headphones and their carefully curated alone time, have almost completely forgotten. Solitude is not neutral. It is powerful. It is dangerous. And when entered deliberately and survived, it changes you. So what does this mean for the solitude you experience today? You have more aloneness than any human in history. You live in apartments with closed doors. You commute alone. You work in private offices. You spend hours in a state of physical isolation that no human nervous system in the ancestral environment ever had to adapt to. And the research is clear on what this does. Chronic loneliness, not chosen solitude, but the experience of feeling socially disconnected, is now understood to be as damaging to physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The ancient alarm is still ringing. Most modern humans just learn to ignore it. But here is the other side. Chosen, deliberate, purposeful solitude, the kind your ancestors entered with intention and exited with meaning, is one of the most cognitively powerful states a human brain can enter. The research on creativity, insight, and deep thinking consistently shows that the brain makes its most significant connections not during stimulation, but during quiet. Not the busy quiet of scrolling through a phone, the actual quiet of a mind left to itself, without input, without distraction, without the social processing that consumes so much of the brain's available energy. This is what your ancestors discovered. in the dark, alone and afraid, that the silence survived long enough eventually gives something back. For 300,000 years, your ancestors were almost never alone, and when they were, every instinct they had screamed at them to fix it. But the ones who endured the solitude long enough, the lost hunters who found their way back, the young people who survived their vision quests, the wanderers who walked far enough to find a new tribe, came back changed. They had something to say. They had been somewhere the rest of the group hadn't. And maybe that is what solitude was always for. Not rest, not escape. A place the group couldn't follow you, so that you could find something there and bring it back.